Welcome to another episode of Web3 Masterminds. And with us today is going to be the Forward Protocol team, Mitch and Key, and then we have the Abachi team with us to talk about all things Web 3.0. So we would like to thank Cryptopolitan once again for hosting this event, and let's get started.
Oh, great. Good to be with you guys. Nice to
hello,
chat
Steve.
this afternoon.
Hello, Faisal.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for hosting.
Very excited to be here.
Okay, so please tell me a little bit about yourselves. How did you get into the crypto space, Steve and Faisal?
So I'll start. I know Steve is having some issues with his internet, which is fighting with, but essentially I started with crypto in 2013. I bought a miner from Alibaba, and just been going through that. Did some development for Litecoin. Started off with Litecoin, got into Bitcoin, then started mining Ethereum. And right around 2017, 2018, we got into the space of, private smart contracts, worked a little bit on the projects coming, which, back then the chain was known as the JP Morgan chain, which has now been acquired by Consensus. So worked on that a little bit. That's essentially where we got started. Have been in the space for some time and looked at a few projects go, up and down. I am still mostly a Bitcoin bull, and then everything else, falls from there for me. And I don't know if Steve's around, but I can tell you he's the opposite of me. He's an Ethereum bull. So yeah.
Hey, you guys got a good mix.
Yeah. So far so good. Yeah.
That's cool. Very cool. So just a little bit from our side, I'll tell you a bit about Forward and how we get to be here chatting to you guys. So Forward Protocol is like WordPress for Web3. And essentially what we do is we provide no-code toolkits to encourage the adoption of blockchain technology for typical real-world businesses that would possibly be and sit in Web 2. And the problem that we've identified is that there's massive functionality, as you know, in DeFi and NFTs and everything sitting on the inside of blockchain. And the guys that are inside the space, it's very easy for them to speak about it, to understand it, because we use it every single day. But most of the world's economy sits outside. And the only way for us to really encourage this adoption is to make it really simple. So what Forward does is it makes very simple no-code interface. You don't need to have any technical knowledge. You can use the smart contract templates in your business environment and adopt blockchain technology like that. And the only thing we really focus on is being that gateway for adoption into the whole blockchain space for the value-driven or real-world economy. And that's Forward in a nutshell.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you, Mitch. Okay, so let's hear about Abachi. What is Abachi? Can you describe your inspiration behind it and what you're trying to solve with it?
Yeah, so back in 2017, we founded a company called Luca. Essentially, what we wanted to do was solve the cash flow issues for small business. The biggest issue that we saw essentially was, you receive an invoice, and then you have 7 days, up to 30 days, depending upon, who you sent the invoice to, for them to pay you back. And this is really a huge problem for small businesses, because for them, cash flow is king. What they want to be able to do is, use that money all the time, and waiting on an invoice to get paid, then they have to tap into short-term lending solutions. And those lending solutions, they vary based on, the business and the interest rates and a whole bunch of things. What we saw back then was that a lot of these businesses were already tied to financial accounting softwares, Xero, QuickBooks, Intuit, SAP, smaller ones like FreshBooks. There was a lot of historical data that was already available to us with the partner integrations. And if you then, along with that, start looking at the banking transactions with open banking APIs, had access to that, you could come up with a risk profile for every business, which was not dependent on their credit score. It was dependent on their frequency of payment. Frequency of payment was much more important to us, because what that means is, number one, that this person does pay their bill, they paid it on time, and they have a really good history of doing it. Once we started getting that, what we wanted to do was extend it and then start lending out money to them in terms of short-term, zero interest, buy now, pay later. And that is something that has been very popular. So essentially, Abachi was born out of that idea. We obviously wanted to take this system, not just with Luca Plus and some small businesses. We wanted to make it into a protocol which could actually do it for a lot of different businesses, expand and scale along with that. In the short term, our goals obviously are just to start getting those permissioned, decentralized pool going. We do believe regulations will come. We do believe that we need to make the tooling right now for permissioned decentralized finance. And when I say that, I know it makes no sense, because a lot of folks will be like, that makes no sense. Why would you have KYC over a lending pool? And to some degree, I do agree with them, but there's no going around regulations. KYC and AML rules are there. Under the current circumstances, there's a lot of money that's sitting on the side that you cannot bring over to lend and borrow from, because you have no tools that will allow to onboard that money, right? So if there's an investor that's putting their money in the bank and trying to earn 5%, they could put it over a permission decentralized pool, which I can then use to then fund these businesses and give them a yield which is higher than the bank. So that's where it came from. The long term, obviously, for us is that once you start doing this, there's a lot of other things cool things that you will have to build and do. So Abachi exists essentially trying to bridge DeFi and TradFi. That is our whole aim. We're going to build the tools. We're going to build the capability. We'll go ahead and acquire any projects that help us do that. And that's basically our aim.
Just to interrupt you here, because it's very, very exciting with what you're doing, because I'm a guy who believes in the freedom and not having to have someone behind my tail, but I understand the fact that there's not, you said there's a lot of money waiting on the sidelines. It's not a lot, it's massive. It's humongous. And it's easy, but it doesn't happen because of what you said. But I like to understand, when you explain it more from a user perspective. Can you define, I'm a user, I'm coming to start. What do I do? I know you have KYC as a service. I know you have the permissionless certified part. Tell me just in a flow, what do I do right now?
So all you will do as a user is you will sign up to one of our partners. For example, Luca Plus, that is the partner that we are piloting with also the previous company that I founded. Luca Plus is integrated into Xero, QuickBooks, major accounting system. It also has an invoicing system built in. So if you are not using one of them, you can use it as an invoicing system. You send an invoice to whoever owes you money. With that invoice, there will be a button that says, pay this invoice with Luca Pay. They click on that button. At that point, we onboard them directly onto Luca Pay. Luca Pay is powered in the backend by Abachi permissioned pools. So we can, at real time, number one, figure out who the customer and the supplier is, because both of them are on the network and Luca Plus knows about them. We can onboard them in terms of KYC. So in the first version, Luca Plus does the KYC. In the second version, the KYC is done by the Abachi SDK. So we can onboard them using simple clicks, a KYC. Once you have that KYC, I can then keep on lending them money. Now, what will happen in terms of the user flow? You send your invoice, the supplier gets the buyer gets the invoice. He or she doesn't have the money, says, I'll pay it with buy now, pay later. clicks on a button, that message comes all the way back to Abachi. Abachi says, okay, you have already done the KYC and we've already onboarded this business previously. Let's go ahead and fund this invoice for 20K at, essentially in the beginning, we'll be doing it really good rates of 4% for 4 months. So we'll fund it at 4% for 4 months. That's 12%, annualized. And as an end user, you do absolutely nothing. Our partners, our front end, so Luca Plus and all these other partners that come on board the Abachi protocol, they actually handle the funding and all those parts. That's part one. So we start there. The biggest issue being, the off ramp. How do you convert the USD that I just lent out in, AUD or whatever they're using in the real world? So that's number one, where our partners will help us with that. Secondly, we want to get to a position where we teach them that you never need to actually, cash out. That money that you just received inside Luca Plus, we're building, so in second stage, we will be building a wallet that's integrated in there. It's essentially a Genesis wallet. We're building an SDK developers can use, and the money is there. So when the money comes in, now you can use that money to pay another invoice. So you now have your digital economy that's happening inside your invoicing app.
Okay, but from the flow, basically the money is lent by 2 or 3 specific partners. It's not really going directly to the DeFi markets, but these 2 or 3 partners in turn will be using the DeFi for the yields. So they basically, have a margin there, but then they're using, it's almost like, then it's leveraging the decentralized finance, but it is functioning within a permissioned, KYC verified, limited circle of partners who are completely regulated. So it works in the regulated space for leveraging the DeFi space.
Yeah, and eventually what will happen is, so what I'm talking about will be the simplistic first version, but eventually when these pools increase, then you will have bids. So Luca Plus, if there's like 5 or 6 businesses and the lending pool only has $1 million in it, then all these 5 businesses will bid for that money, right? Because there's only 5 that are KYC approved. It's a permission pool. Only 5 of them can bid. And then, our permission pool takes up the biggest bid. What this does is it increases the size of the permission pool, because as the bids come in, obviously the yields are going up, and these are real world yields, like they're actual money. So when Luca Plus, borrows money from us, they actually don't give us a coin, they give us actual money back.
Then it becomes a market. Supply demand plays in, the rates fluctuate and whatnot.
Yeah, and at that point, then you can start opening it up to other platforms like Aave Arc, Centrifuge, other stuff. Yeah. So that's the idea.
But basically, then the people are not allowed to take the funds as let's say USDT or whatever they have, and it's locked. It's within the application framework. They cannot take it out and do anything with it at that point in this particular part of the flow.
Correct. So when you put your money in and somebody has bid on it, it acts as a loan bond. You can call it a bond or a coupon of, it's a loan obligation essentially. And that's why, eventually we think that these markets are actually going to change into tokenized credit markets. So you will have different token obligations or CDOs that you will be issuing. So even though we're starting very small with small businesses, as is, 5 years from now, as institutions start using it, they can now use this to issue, debt instruments. And the market for that is like 23 trillion. So
that's massive.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting part here is, as you just said, you're igniting the very basic, the very fundamental, the most, the most used or the basic tool here. But once the tool comes, there are a million derivatives possibilities out there. And those derivatives can easily build from, because this is the foundation, the basic stuff. It's massive.
I mean, yeah, knock on wood. That's what we believe, right?
So tell me this. What do you see are the lowest hanging fruit here? Obviously, you're not gonna get a bank coming and buying in the early stage. But who do you believe are the earliest users from the real world who will be able to adopt this? Because both governments and banks would ideally be slow, even though it's regulated, they'll be slower. But there'll be multiple other entities who can take that first step and function within that regulated space. Who is that?
So that's an excellent question. So that's why we went and started with small medium business. So Luca Plus has about 900 small to medium provide services to. And the way that it provides services is it's an accredited e-invoicing provider, accredited with the ATO and the international EU standards. So every invoice is sent electronically. We already have a lot of data. We're going to start with them. Now, in terms of invoice funding, think of it, the business does not have to have a lot of profit. It just needs to have a lot of money going in and out. A normal business, for example, will be taking about 200K, 100K to 200K in financing, because these are very quick short-term loans paid over 4 months, over 4 equal installments, only a 4% fee. So eventually what we want to tell them is, when you receive your electricity bill, automated using Lookup Plus. So we will provide them the SDK and stuff on how to do that, but automated using your Lookup Pay, which is powered by Abachi, your bill gets immediately paid. If there are any discounts that you get for early payments, you will get those, and you only pay 4% over 4 months for this bill. Once they start seeing the power of that, they can then start automating all of their bills. So
ideally, I mean, sorry for cutting you short. I'm just very excited about this right now.
Yeah, no worries.
And so basically, you're targeting the small businesses who will have lesser regulatory pressure, which means they can make a decision quicker. And at the same time, you're giving them a direct benefit from the day one. So which kind of incentivizes them, because it's a short term. They see the result on 1 day and 1 month and they repeat it. That part is great. But how do you ensure collateralization with these guys? Are you asking them to, like in DeFi markets, use the crypto as a collateral, or how are you doing that?
So the way that we collateralize with them are, there's 2 ways. So we worked while we were at Luca Plus. So we have a patent pending for this. We worked on a credit score, a credit risk profile. It's not actually a credit score, which is based off of your payment history. So how many payments have you been doing and receiving? And it's also based on how long you take to make that payment. So what we try and figure out the score is per dollar owed. How long does it take you to pay that dollar owed? And why can we do that? Because we have their entire history of invoicing. When they connect their invoicing software, for example, Xero or MYOB, because we are a developer partner, we can pull the history for 1 year or 2 years and look at all their invoices and figure out which ones were paid. We can also cross-reference them, because it is right now it's only in Australia, but it talks to 75 institutions, banking institutions. So we can cross-reference that against their bank balances also to see, okay, have they actually done this? So we start there. We still think there is going to be some default. So the default rates are built in. So the way that we actually do the yield calculations, we cater for defaults. And essentially in the start, it is going to be a pilot. So we're starting with 10 people and a total pool of about, 500,000, 500K. And we'll just grow from there. So it will require some, but you can think of it as, small lending, which has less regulatory pressure, like you said, and there is more appetite for risk. Now, it works in
the same time, the amount of risk involved in this is higher because it's not 100% collateralized like in the DeFi loans. Here, you're using the score. So how do you handle that risk? Who will buy it with the partners?
So there's 9%. So we did a market study on this. There's about a 9% risk of defaults, right? When you start lending using something like an afterpay, which is buy now, pay later, this actually falls down to 5 to 6%. And the reason for that is they do not want to lose that source of funding, because only once or twice when they miss their payments, just like any other afterpay or those commercial offerings, they will never be able to utilize the service again. Secondly, the default rates are built into the yield. So every time we pay the yield, there is an insurance fund where we are, putting money away. So in case the defaults happen, we can cover those. The ABI, the last resort is ABI, which is our token. So if we see that the insurance fund and everything else could not collateralize it, then ABI holders get a slashing and we pay it out of ABI. Much like it also happens in DeFi platform. For example, in Aave, even though it's collateralized, but if all the liquidations happen and they don't have enough money, they will sell your Aave, your staked Aave.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a disastrous thing, but that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so now I think the product clarity part is very clear. Let's jump on to the perspectives that we have around the industry on this. So, the reason why this excites me because, as you know, Forward's major goal is to bring the real world entities, real adoption from the world out to the blockchain and provide all the facilitatable tools there. So, the permissionable DeFi system that you have, or the ability to do a KYC as a service, those are all interesting tools that can integrate in factory, which can facilitate and enable the new businesses who are coming. And if they fall within the regulatory criteria and they want to take up something in a regulated space, they can do it. Because when we, factories show the options for a non-regulated, that's a pure crypto kind of a solution, you have like Aave and you have a bunch of them. You have many protocols that they can use. They can connect with in one click and they can use them. But when it comes to regulated, the amount of solutions are very less. I believe at this point, we have about 2 to 3 partners, out of which only 2 of them who have a deployable solution coming later in this year, which are within the permissioned model. But out of that, again, the level of complexity of onboarding function varies between partner to partner. So this is an exciting place because it now finally gives our users who are integrating and building their applications more usable and integratable solutions on the regulated side, which is something that is a fair play end of the day. I mean, not everyone would adopt the degen and complete decentralized models, at least in the next, maybe a decade or less. And this model is definitely going to be super critical for the larger growth in the next, 1 to 1.5 decades, as I see it. So that's an
100%.
exciting part. Yeah.
100% agree with you. I think the next round of hype and the things that will be built will be around permission DeFi. If you look at the bigger players, they're already talking about it. Aave has Aave Arc. Centrifuge is already there. They have a real world market on Aave Arc right now. The difference being Centrifuge's market right now pays only a 1% yield. It's actually less than 1% right now on the real permission market, right? And they offset it with a 14% emission of Centrifuge, their own coin. So which is why we went with a rebasing model on ABI, because we know that we will have to incentivize these pools, and we will have to incentivize them much more than DeFi in the beginning. So to pay those yields, you need a coin which is already rebasing itself. So there's supply is expanding as we need it, and then we can issue bonds to do the supply more. Second problem over here is that how do you manage the money? So there's money sitting over here in the DAO, which is all DeFi money, and then you need now permissioned money, which is a completely separate pool. So we also have to manage those. So definitely some challenges over there, but absolutely, I think this is where the industry is going to move to.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. That's definitely a prominent trend in 2022. And it's funny, it's the trend of regulation is also the Achilles heel, because if you can get that sorted out, then it really opens up the scope for accessing that large pool of money, which you guys have highlighted.
So what do you see, let's say, in next 2 to 3 years, if you need to paint a picture of how the global DeFi markets is going to evolve? Don't describe it, but paint a picture. I want to see a vision of how it looks like, let's say 5 years from now. After 5 years, how is it going to be working? How is it functioning in the real world? Where do you see it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if you ask me my thoughts, as a founder of this project, I'm like extremely bullish. So one of the examples that I tell people is there's going to be a day when my platform is actually going to issue a sovereign country, a sovereign bond. So there's going to be a day when there's a country that needs to actually raise money. And I give them the example of Pakistan because, originally from Pakistan, my parents are from Pakistan. I still keep up with the news. And the biggest issue that Pakistan has is it's always raising money. It's always, trying to raise that debt. The total debt obligation right now that we're trying to raise is about $6 billion. If I had a platform where I can issue that 6 billion, it's not that much money when you think about it in the worldwide terms. There is more money sitting on the side which can actually be deployed. If I can issue that bond on a platform and the authorities can go in, click a couple of buttons, every participant is automatically KYC'd and all the bonds are automatically built, I can, that will be a game changer. And once that starts happening, as digital currencies start becoming the norm, I absolutely think that these bonds will be issued on the blockchain because everybody can see them, everybody can track them, you can collateralize them, you can break them up, you can sell them on. There's so many things you can do with them. You can offer a 30-year bond with a 10-year bond. Then you could sell the 30-year bond and buy the 10-year bond. You can arb between them. All of these markets are going to move on chain, and they don't move on chain because on chain is more efficient. They move on chain because it is more public. And now I think is the time when people are understanding that blockchain was never about speed or never about this breakthrough technology. It was always about a public ledger, right? So the biggest concerns that they used to have like 3 years ago was don't use blockchain. Everybody who wants to do illegal stuff uses blockchain. Now those concerns are don't use blockchain because you will get caught, right? So I think that narrative will change. I think country states will start adoption. We're seeing that with Bitcoin. It's going to happen with other coins too.
Mitch, what is your perspective on it? How do you see it?
You asking me, Key?
Yes, Mitch, go ahead. I want to hear your perspective on it as
well.
Yeah,
I like Faisal. It's a really interesting, point to come from because it's tackling the elephant in the room head on, which is regulation. I mean, it's like everybody tries to sidestep it. But as you said, 3 years ago, people wanted to hide in blockchain, and now they don't want it because they're exposed. And you guys are actually painting this vision of uniting two different worlds, which is the real world economy, which has to be regulated and understands it, and this system that can really take finance to the next level. And I mean, I hear what you're saying in that, but they're obviously in anything, and you've probably come across the bottlenecks would actually slow this down. So what are the things that you see as the biggest bottlenecks that if we remove them would really open the floodgates and allow the money that's sitting in the real world to actually come into this decentralized finance world and take advantage of all of the opportunities that are there and available for them to grow their businesses, etc.?
For me, I think there's two biggest bottlenecks. Number one is the regulations they're not good. They're at a place where you go to a lawyer, the lawyer basically tells you, this is my opinion. And, yes, my opinion, depending upon the lawyer that you go to, he'll go, he or she will go, this is my opinion. Yes, you can do it. And if something goes bad, they're like, that was my opinion. That doesn't mean it's set in stone. So who do you go to? You try and read the documentation that's out there on the regulations. It's just not good enough. I strongly believe that what we need to do is just jump in and start building and then start educating the masses. We're not trying, nobody is here trying to do anything malicious. By and large, 99% of the market is actually in it for the innovation. We're building all these cool tools. And what we want to be able to do is, show them this is how it works. And this is how it will work with all your compliance and regulatory laws. So work with us, help us figure out what we can do. And that's why we also started with buy now, pay later, by the way. Buy now, pay later does not come under the, the credit card and the credit loan rules. It's a fixed fee that you're charging on installments. So there is an area there which is not heavily regulated. So that's why we're starting there. But eventually, I think we need to work with the regulation. That is the biggest bottleneck. And the second biggest bottleneck.
I really hope no one is hearing to this from the regulator side. Otherwise, they'll start regulating that segment. Hey, there's a loophole. This guy found it.
No. It's very well known. It's been very well documented. There have been cases, with Afterpay. I mean, we're not the first ones that are coming up with that, buy now, pay later. And this is actually documented in the regulations that if you charge a fixed fee, which is under a certain amount, then you do not have to go and get an AFSL, which is Australian Financial Services License. You don't need that. But we do want to get to a point where we actually need that. And to get to that point, I think the second thing that needs to improve in this space is the user experience, the wallet experience, the MetaMask experience, just the experience of, onboarding somebody who's new to crypto is painful. It's really, really painful. Yeah. Most of the time, I tell my folks, buy a $99 Ledger Nano, because otherwise you will get hacked. And most of them get hacked. By the time they're good enough to figure out how DeFi works, they're on somebody's Discord, somebody sends them a message, gets their seed, and they're hacked, right? So we need to solve that.
Yeah, it's 100% right. I mean, at Forward, we focus on building infrastructure and creating easy templates for people, because it's exactly as you say. I think the whole crypto blockchain world at the moment is really clunky, and it's actually damn hard to implement and to understand unless you really are fan, you use it all the time. So I think it makes a lot of sense what you say. When you've got something that's easy to use and easy to implement, and people can integrate it into their businesses as they do today, it'll gain that adoption and get a lot of businesses actually subscribing to it, because that's what people really want. They just want a functional product that is user-friendly and can be adopted without them relearning the whole system.
Yeah. So Mitch, let me ask you a question too about Forward. Now,
sure.
I have used WordPress quite a lot. I haven't in the last 5 years, but very well aware of that. Anybody in the space who tries to do a startup, the first website they do is on WordPress. So I get the idea, because it allows you to build that presence. Now, how are you looking at in terms of competition? Have you looked at other platforms out there? What has been your learnings based on where they failed and what is actually missing? For example, I talk about Steemit. There's a couple others. There was a clone of Steemit also. They were trying to make a Facebook, not really a WordPress. But what do you think are your challenges going to be, bringing it and telling people how to use it?
Well, I'll start off and then I'll hand over to Keith for the more technical side. But just from a layman's perspective, the challenges that the world faces now is to find things that are easy to use and to integrate. People's attention span is really, really short, and they don't want to relearn things. We've seen that with everything around us. We're distracted all the time. And the way that WordPress works and has been extremely successful across is the simplicity and ease of use, having a widget developer library that people can contribute to, and creating that community around it, which actually supports the whole ecosystem and grows it as a whole. So what we've really focused on, and you talk about competition, we focused on, eliminating competition completely and just collaborating, because right across the space, what we are offering is an open source protocol where we encourage other developers to come in and contribute to a smart contract library. They'd be able to contribute their templates and, utilize it, make a profit on it, charge fees, whatever they want to do, but really grow the industry as a whole. And the way we see it is that is creating that gateway. The simpler it is for a person to come in and integrate with a one-click drag and drop application, which has got a back end and a front end. So we're not giving them an API to connect where you've got to have any technical knowledge or anything like that. It's a very simple process. It'll create adoption, because theoretically, you'd be able to come into decide, look, I want to use this application, the smart contract, come in, download it, deploy it, utilize it. If it doesn't work for you, then try something else. There's no cost to you up front. It's easy to implement. It works in a very intuitive UI way, and it encourages you to try things. And that's what we want people to do. And, as we grow and our infrastructure grows and the integration partners grow, it allows you to move across this ecosystem in a seamless way. And exactly the way you were saying, where, wallets and MetaMask and things now are really clunky and people don't understand it. A lot of what we've got to do is education. It's bringing the product to a market that really needs it, because what's out there at the moment isn't fully functional, and there are better opportunities, better solutions for them in their businesses. But because they don't understand how to use it, and because the education is lacking, they can't actually access it. So our job is to make it simple enough so that a lot of the processes that you've learned in your Web2 experience can move seamlessly through to this Web3 space. And the templates, the interfaces, etc., will allow you to do that. And then on top of that is utilize the education process to simplify it in a way that you'd understand it, not from a crypto blockchain way, because we all understand this inside terminology, etc. You talk to your mates about it, their eyes roll back, they don't understand anything. So it's to simplify it and make it really, really easy so that you're not fearful about trying, about losing money, about doing something like that. You actually want to integrate, you want to try it and get going. And I mean, Key can fill in, but our whole goal is in being open and collaborative, encouraging partners to join, working together to create an environment that is very welcoming for Web2 businesses to come in, integrate, deploy, and utilize the technology in a seamless, very easy to use manner.
So to jump in on that, imagine the experience where they use one of our existing application templates. Let's say the fundraising template that we have, the initial value offering model, and they create their own version of Kickstarter through that. And then they go select the option that they want to do this on a permissioned blockchain, regulated framework, and then they choose to work with you. Then whenever someone funds it, you have a KYC verified, and they know who the fund is being going to, and things like that. You could pretty much have the pools of lending and borrowing that supports that investment process of theirs. If you're trying to use it in proof of ownership contract, you could then track who is actually owning a particular piece of asset as an NFT. And the proof of ownership is used for things like certifications and other identities, not only for NFT as a tradable asset. So in all those instances, having the permissioned solution there helps those users, and it all happens in a click. So for us, the model is wide. We don't stand by anyone's one particular site saying, okay, this is what we are proposing. We are giving them all the tools. We are creating a factory. We are equipping that with hundreds of tools. Some tools are related to the regulated people. Some are for the unregulated space. Some are for the the upcoming cutting edge space. Some could be on the oracles and infrastructure side. Any of the blockchain tools, it's available for them. How people use it, how people integrate it, it's up to their own creativity, their own business model there. Our job is to make it simple, where it's a matter of few clicks, whether it's an SDK integration, API integration, or what kind of integration that goes in there. We do all that in the back end. And for them, it's a checkbox. Select this checkbox, and then you get what you want to get out of that. If you want to configure something, you configure on the UI, and everything else is taken care of in the back end. When we make it that simple, from ideation to reality for them, it's such a short time span, it's such a low risk time span that the number of people adopting and using it will be substantially higher. One of the models that we see happening right now is that we have many of our partners, they refer their people who are trying to integrate with them to us, because it's like if they expect them to integrate with them, it takes them months of time, and 80%, 90% attrition rate happens. But if they integrate through us, it's a one click for them, and then the amount of people who end up doing it is going to be substantially higher. So that's the kind of gap that we are bridging in the process. And our biggest challenge is not a technical challenge. It's not even a challenge on regulation or adoption side. Our challenge is simplicity. How do we make things simple? Because the blockchain space is complex, and we are taking all our efforts, study, research, and trials on making everything as simple as possible with the least amount of steps and details or challenges, but still giving them the options to customize to the level that they want to customize, to have that control on how their vision is orchestrated on the blockchain. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely does, guys. It's really, really, really cool. Very, very, very interesting space. And it's generally just really cool, all the other stuff that's coming out of Web3, I can tell you guys a story in 2017, because I've been, in 2 bear markets now. In 2017, the first thing everybody would ask you when you went there is, do you need a token? Why do you need a token? Why does it need a blockchain? And the first thing everybody asks you now is, does it have a token? Is it on the blockchain? Why doesn't it have a token? So yeah, narratives change. The industry is growing up, and we can kind of understand, why it needs it, why in-app economies are needed, and we've known this for some time. Using our phone apps, every app has had an in-app economy. It's just we took it to the Web3. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
absolutely
think
right.
that's a very interesting portion, because every time we had an app with an in-app economy, it's almost like the social tokens, which get stuck within an ecosystem and never gets used outside of it. You cannot use it outside. You might be a millionaire on a particular points of
Right.
a particular system, but if you're moving to some other country, you're moving to some place where the service is not there, all that is wasted. There is no means of transfer of value between one social token or one in-app economy or one reward points for a particular brand to another. And even with the penalization, if people can move from one to another, they'll gladly move and they'll be more loyal. And instead of locking them in on something that gets unused and they don't really feel rewarded at the end of the day. So there is a lot of potential around all of those as they move to the blockchain. I really would like to see a time when the social tokens and others, including the loyalty points and whatnot, they start to realize that the world is an open space. It's no longer the closed space. You don't have to control your users. You don't have to tie them up to your brand, force yourself on them, but give them the freedom and give them the value, and they will come to you because because of what you do there. So yeah, that narrative is very strong and very exciting.
Hmm.
We'll hand it back to you, Danae.
Okay, so after all that's been said and analyzed, Key, I would like to hear your opinion on Abachi and what it's trying to do. And is there any common ground with Foro Protocol?
I definitely think there's an amazing common ground here, because this is an amazing opportunity for our regulated space as well. And with the kind of tools and information provided here, it's going to be super, super. It kind of will push people who have been on the sidelines to get started. We provide all the tools, but then the permission and the regulation portion, if it's coming from Abachi, it just makes the process so much more easier. So I'm definitely excited on that, and look forward for integration around those areas in the future.
Great, thank you. And what about you, Faisal? Do you see any common ground? Do you agree with me? Do you have anything else that you think can take it even further?
I do. One of the things that we want to be able to do is provide every business with a universal business ID. And there's a bunch of services right now trying to do that. There's identity, digital assets that's trying to do that. There's civic. There's a bunch of different providers for ID. But what we essentially want to be able to do is tie that ID with their actual business ID. For example, in Australia, that will be an Australian business number. In the US, it will be, I don't know, their EIN or whatever their business number is. And these business numbers are what tell you which company it is. So I definitely do see that, once they have their profiles up and running, it would have somewhere that they can actually go in and generate their ID. And this is a service that we can provide using our SDK. Once they have generated that ID, we can also provide the underlying SDK that allows one business to chat with another business in a verifiable way, knowing that, when Coca-Cola is, sending a message to Pepsi-Cola, they know that both of these are the legit companies because they are on the blockchain, and it's actually the message and everything is going over the blockchain. So we can actually power the tech underneath that. And the UX and the front end would still be, forward. So absolutely, there is so many synergies that we do think will happen because we build the tech and then we rely on partners to actually use that tech.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Mitch, what do you think?
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing, and there's definitely a lot of synergies. And for me, I think like when you look at something that's completely decentralized, like in 2017, they're talking about complete decentralization, and that's what people are pushing for. It doesn't really make sense to me because you have this big pushback all the time, and regulation is always going to hold you in place, and it's going to be like a big force pushing against you. But as soon as you can comply with regulation, and you can get in line and you can open the doors, exactly what you guys are doing, Faisal. It just opens up the floodgates because it gives permission to regulated organizations to come into a space. And sometimes they can't come in, not because they don't want to, but because they aren't able to, because regulation actually holds them back. And I think what you guys are doing is smart. I think the synergies between, like what we're trying to do is the same thing from a different angle, where you're allowing people to come into a space because you're giving them an easy entry into the space. So you're taking away those barriers. And I think what you're doing, taking away barriers in DeFi, and what we're doing, taking away barriers in infrastructure and allowing people to connect, there's a lot of synergy between the two projects, the two organizations, and look forward to working with you guys. I think it's going to be good.
Thank you, Mitch. Okay, and on a final note, on a more serious note, I would like to ask you both this question. So right now, the world is devastated by another war, the Russia-Ukrainian war, and we actually see a lot of movement in the crypto community to support Ukraine. And what do you think the role of crypto can be in such circumstances? And do you think crypto and blockchain is something that can reduce the burden of this war, that can contribute in a meaningful way? Faisal, please go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think crypto, not just for Ukraine, it actually helps a lot of countries where access to banking is not that good. It definitely also adds a little bit of issues for some countries also. And I'll take an example of, again, India, Pakistan, Philippines, Bangladesh. These are emerging economies where the biggest issue right now is remittance, because these countries rely a lot on USD coming in. Their biggest issue is if that USD is coming in through a digital wallet, how do we tax it? How do we show it in our bank? What do we actually do? So I think there's going to be a lot of regulation that is going to step in for that. In terms of humanitarian relief and wherever we're seeing, whenever some kind of disaster happens, we've seen that the crypto folks actually have the biggest hearts out there. They actually will donate much more than even bigger institutions. I was looking at the numbers yesterday. They may have changed now, but I believe the crypto folks donated almost as much as the UN did for humanitarian aid. Obviously, NATO and everybody else is providing a lot for military aid, but humanitarian aid, the crypto folks matched it. So I think it's a very, very strong proposition. The countries should actually start looking into this and getting the sensible regulations in place. Work with the bigger guys, work with the bigger exchanges, for example, FTX, Binance, work with Bitfinex, work with them to see how they can actually bring these to their people. If they do that, I think it is going to be an excellent thing for economies and for disaster relief and anything else, because it just removes all the friction of money. The money goes from one wallet to another wallet in 5 seconds, and you have immediate access to those funds. So I think it's going to be a game changer. And all of these events, every event that happens shows us the strength of this economy every time. So I think it's just going to become very, very normal.
Yes, that's a very fair point. I totally agree. What about you, Mitch? What do you think?
Yeah, what Faisal said, I agree 100%. Every big major event highlights what the benefits of using crypto are. And sometimes for the people that are, entrenched or embroiled in those events, it sometimes comes a little bit late, because when bank accounts are closed and you can't, get your money into crypto and you can't move it in a frictionless manner, it's very, very sad, because I feel for people in those countries that have all of their assets and their liquidity locked up and they can't move it. So I think all of these events create a catalyst type effect, and they just highlight to us, as we see across the developing world. And I am sometimes astounded how we stand with our heads, our collective heads as humanity, buried in the sand, when there's an opportunity for you to gain some control we always leave it till the last minute, and then we scramble to try and do something in a panicked, unstructured way. So I think it's good. I really feel for that part of the world now, and I mean, our sympathies go out to them and their families. It's a terrible time to be living through. But for the rest of us, it really is a lesson to start looking around, start learning about the space, about what it can do to, for good, for the developing world, how it can, create an inclusive society and give us control. And when we couple that with an environment that is regulated in a way that is acceptable, which it will come, there's no doubt about it, it's going to come, it's going to be completely acceptable across our banking systems and the way that it works, then everybody wins. And ultimately, it's just up to us to educate ourselves and take the first step. And that would be my sort of thought to leave with people that are listening is, this whole program is about education. It's about helping you understand that there is a different outcome for you if you're prepared to learn about it. And I'd encourage you to use the lessons that are in our faces every single day in our news feeds and look to alternate solutions that are around us. And once you learn about those solutions, it'll give you more surety in your future, in the way you control your money, and allow you to be part of something that is fundamentally changing the way money and finance and business will work in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's just sort of my perspective. And I hope people realize that and look around and say, wow, it's time to wake up and to start getting educated.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. Very insightful. I think that is the best way to close this session. I would like to thank Faisal so much for joining us and for contributing very meaningfully to this conversation. And I would also like to thank you, Mitch and Key. And until next time.
Thank you.
Great, thanks
you so
very much. Nice chatting, Faisal.
Yeah, thank you so much, all. It was an excellent chat. Thank you so much.
You're well. Cheers.
Take care now. Bye-bye.